Awesome. And then I'm writing one thing. Yeah, so I'll come up with a agenda for all the other meetings. Realistically, the control center meetings are going to be about control center, but I'll be a little more specific on that. And then today we're going to really deep dive into the template and go over some of those pieces, including the intake and project summary roll-up as well.
Okay.
Cool. And then with that being said, we'll start with the intake in here. And we're going to we'll come back to the intake. We'll start with the new template in here. So with that being said, what you'll notice is there's a few different folders. Again, we'll most likely clean them up as an admin role. Again, you can kind of structure this however you want. This is going to be our admin workspace. So this is going to be primarily shared from a workspace perspective to the solution administrators such as yourselves. And then from there, we might do some minor sharing to like the portfolio dashboard, but it's going to be item specific sharing in here. So like viewers, like management might get portfolio dashboard, or we would share, individuals to intake and project summary roll up. But realistically, this is a place where all of those kind of important documents that you may not want to, you want to be more selective about who, again, gets to edit what, will be located in this workspace. Our main one is our new template. So you can think of this as the blueprint for how Control Center, which is again our solution for creating multiple projects at scale, is looking at. This is going to dictate whenever a new project gets created, what gets, again, inputted into here. Now, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with the project data sheet, and we're just going to go down the line in terms of what everything does. Mm-hmm. Our project data sheet, like I've talked about before, is the most important piece. Again, we've kind of showed you how there is connections between the rows and other sheets in here, and so we'll talk about that. But first, we're going to talk about kind of what are some of the inputs that you can make and what things are coming in automatically. So the first part is the one thing I want to also describe as well is the difference between metadata and metrics from a Smartsheet perspective, or profile data, metadata versus metrics. When we kind of describe that, profile and metadata are information that helps you identify a project and the main points of contact. So the part that I have highlighted realistically, aside from maybe our project vendor list, is profile data or metadata. Now, most of this is going to be coming in from the intake sheet and Control Center. We're going to talk about that in just a moment. What are some of the important things to note from a system admin perspective? But everything in gray here should come in realistically automatically, with the exception of a few items. Now, it's not to say that we can't go and update these later, the gray cells, but realistically, when it comes to the solution in general, gray cells typically mean do not touch. And it's really realistically because they have a formula in it, which will, again, provide value to you. So there's no reason to remove it, or there's an important value that's coming in from somewhere else, or it's a value that is going to be automatically populated. That's typically what that is. Now, the yellow, however, can be inputted. Now, I'll go ahead and put something in here and you'll see where it's used. The other thing that is going to be important are some of these columns, which we'll talk about in just a second as well. But this is going to be where you first set up the project to provide that profile data. That's realistic all, and that's why I brought up profile and metadata first. All of this stuff, information under here, it's going to come in as you go ahead and edit the underlying sheet. So if I edit the contingencies and allowances log, if I edit the project cost tracker, all this stuff is going to come in automatically, which is, again, why these are mostly called metrics. As I get new RFIs, if that's even applicable to my project, my RFIs will start showing information. So that's where, again, when it comes to this sheet from a system administrative and even a project manager perspective, which we'll talk about, the main emphasis starting out is this profile data. And that's because, again, that's what's going to be showing up on the dashboard. It's what's going to be showing up on the project update sheet. And it's also what's going to be showing up on the various other sheets as well. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. Are there any questions about this so far? And right now the yellow is showing values in it. It will be cleared out by once we're done with the trainings. Cool. Now,
I'm sorry, I have a question.
Yeah, please.
So for example, I see that, for example, all the stuff that's coming in with with the blue arrow that's coming in from somewhere else, can you override that by accident?
you can,
Or you can? So,
only if you're an admin though.
oh, okay, good.
And so we'll go into active project just so you can see that. It might just be better to show this anyways. So I'll go down to the project data sheet. But yes, you're correct. So I could technically, so it's going to first say you can't do anything. But once I type in something, I just typed in a J on my keyboard, then it's going to ask, it's going to say, hey, do you want to remove this link?
Oh, okay.
And so if I am an editor, again, if you look my permissions, I'm technically the admin. So I have the ability to edit these cell links. But if I'm an editor, I cannot. I can only edit the yellow.
So editor would just be general project managers, and admin would be people like in this, in these trainings.
Exactly.
Okay.
That's correct.
All right.
And again, that's the reason why they're gray, is because information is coming from different places. It's already coming from different places. Now, I'm saving some things for you to see in just a moment, or in our control center training, so we can talk about how to add in new profile data. But realistically, again, this is always going to come pre-populated with information from the intake sheet, and then the yellow will be cleared out so that you can then update information as it goes on. Now, as a rule of thumb, which you can probably see just from looking at the metrics, aside from a few individual pieces, is when we make cell links or we bring information in, it typically comes into the column right next to what the descriptor column is. So in this case, this is the metric, and my value is always usually adjacent to it, right adjacent to it. Now there's a reason why we do that, and it's due to Control Center. But you'll also notice that we have different columns in here as well that go over, or that contain different types. So like PO/W work order number, health, contact, date, and then a feeds to and a notes column. So those are some of the things that we're going to talk about today as well. Typically, we have those different columns because there's different values. But if you notice, when I do that, I still have it come into the adjacent column. So again, while it's being brought in from Control Center into here, I still make sure I have the value in this adjacent column, and we'll talk about that in just a moment, why that's important. Now, what you'll also notice is there's some information here that's going to be relevant to our project cost tracker, and we're going to talk about that when we go over our project cost tracker sheet. But this is the DNA for your project. This contains all the information and summary information for your project, and that's why it's the most important sheet in here. If the sheet gets deleted, you ruin your connection from your intake, you ruin a lot of connections to that various sheets are grabbing, and you're also losing out on the portfolio summary roll-up piece. Now, if you happen to delete it, what will happen is anything looking at it will have instead of a blue triangle, it'll have a red triangle. And what that means is it just means it's not going to be updated anymore. That's all it's saying. So you could technically delete the sheet. It wouldn't break anything up from the outset. However, nothing will update as soon as, again, you make changes, because again, that sheet or that value was deleted. But it's not that common. Any questions before I continue on?
Just from a support standpoint, if it does get deleted for some weird reason, do we have to contact Smartsheets to get that back or reinitiate it, or how does that work?
It'll always show up in the BBS Smart Sheets CSULB admin. It'll always show up in their deleted items, and then you can just bring it back from there.
Okay, Walter and Ben and Alina, I guess you would have access to that, or it would be that point of contact?
It'd be whoever has access to that user will be able to present it. It's very rare. And typically it's because people aren't adding in new rows or things where you could be subject to deletion. It's typically because they're adding a value in here where it doesn't get deleted. It's very, very uncommon.
Okay, so I guess I'm asking my RIT department if they have access to that CSULB BBS Smart Sheets.
Yeah, we do.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Now this feeds to
And
column. Okay, please.
Just a question on the if in that instance the sheet was deleted, would it just do to pull it back, as you said, it would just be a simple restore, right? Or
Yes.
how would that? Okay.
It'd be restore. Unfortunately, the only thing that would be broken are some of these cell links, but I can show you when we do the control center training, I'll show you how to update the reporting. So it's fixed.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. Now the last column I want to talk about, the notes is more for ours, and we'll most likely delete that. But the last part is the feeds too. Now it does need to be updated because you'll see in here, actually I'll see in the delivery method, not delivery method, sorry, the CMS project number. It's looking at different places, like this is closeout on project dashboard where it's also project cost tracker. So we'll be updating that as well. But this is realistically just to help you from an admin perspective. We'll probably hide it, but it's just for troubleshooting perspective. So if you're wondering what will be the impact downstream of me deleting this number, for example, it would basically show you in here. This is what it's there to tell you. So from a instance where the sheet gets deleted, or again, you're wondering, maybe we'll remove it because it's not as applicable. It's just going to tell you where it feeds to, so you understand where what impact that will have. And it just needs to be updated, which we'll do on our side. Any other questions before we move on? Cool. So again, once we make changes to the intake or to the other sheets and information comes in here, we'll start to show you how, again, that updates based off of those changes. But I'm going to hit save for now. So again, that's really realistically the starting point. That's where we establish some of the other project information, and then we go from there. Now the next piece is kind of broken up into various different pieces. Some are you want to set up right away, and some are more when they're applicable or necessary. So with that being said, I'd say the ones that are going to be pretty much you want to set up right away are the project cost tracker major cap, which we'll talk about in just a minute, the contingencies allowances log, and then Neil, if you have any others that you would suggest having to be inputted, I'd say the schedule is the other one.
What about the fiscal information, like RJ's? Is that what that is?
Yep, copying contingency allowances, not this copy, but contingency allowances, and then project cost tracker. Yep.
More so the one that shows all the funds. Do you know where that is?
Oh, that's a fund tracker, and that will be in here as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we'll talk about that too.
Okay.
Yep.
Jacob, this is Neil. I think you captured it. The ones that have the most interaction, the reports and dashboards, et cetera, the contingency allowances log, which we will need to, I think, probably some more feedback on what reports are needed, and then the project data sheet and schedule, as you've mentioned. The other ones are pretty straightforward: RFI, ASI, submittal log, et cetera. They're just kind of tracking transactional information.
Yeah. And I always tell everyone these are added to the template, but it's when applicable. And we'll go through them today, but realistically, these are the four main ones to focus on. starting with the project data sheet. I know it's not at the top when it should be. It's just because of how the naming convention is. But I typically have the project data sheet be first and then these sheets as well.
Can we, I guess the numbering system or the way you have it listed, can we do it by number so that way it lines up correct, like in order?
Yes, you
Or
can.
is that just the way it comes across?
It comes across it just because depending on the size of the name of the sheet, it cuts
Mhm.
off a certain amount of the name. So that's why it comes across as out of line.
Okay,
But yes, there's ways to fix that.
okay.
And we'll talk about that during our control center training.
So just going back when you create the project, I know it kind of like starts thinking, you know, there's that pause. It automatically creates all these sheets
Mhm.
and the title based on the input data sheet that we created.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Based off of that intake sheet, that's correct.
Intake sheet.
Yep. So we'll go into the project cost tracker first, but the other thing is like the cost request bulletin log, preliminary notices log, field instruction, RFI, ASI submittal, stop notices. Again, when those become applicable, you'll want to go into those sheets. Now we'll just start from the top with the contingencies and allowances log. I'll let Neil kind of take that over just because he's been owning this piece. But I can kind of still drive, Neil, if that works. Or if you want to drive.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, once if you can, let me drive. I've got,
Cool.
so I made some changes to this. I just want
Perfect.
to walk through it. And I've actually, so it'll show up in the new template
Awesome.
set, but can you see my?
Yep, we can see.
You see my contingencies along. Great. So this sheet, and we have presented on this to your group before, Monica, but one of the feedback items we got last time was, you know, when looking at the master log, which is this, you know, set of Excel sheets, what we use to model these sheets off of. This one of the comments that came up during that time was in the CP log, and the desire was to have you know, owner contingency, contractor contingency, and then allowances tracked in columns instead of in rows. So I've made that adjustment here, and I've so these are those same columns
Okay.
here are now represented in the contingency and allowances log with the colors corresponding. So this is the first phase that comes in as an estimate for campus contingency. The second phase as an actual COR, and then the final phase becomes an actual change order.
Okay.
So this log is going to continue to be used as it was used previously to track information, particularly when you got an item, a CP item that has multiple different, you know, elements within a single CP. So it's CP that has owner change as well as contractor change as well as allowances all combined. You can keep that all on one single row, so that capability is now in here. All of the other information that gets tracked, including which GMP number it resides with, CP number, if it's a, you know, again, a campus contingency, contractor contingency, or allowance. Actually, I take that back. This column is no longer be applicable because there are multiples here. So just as I'm looking through this, I'm realizing this change that just needs to be made. But all the other functionality, it still exists. Date received, when field instructions are issued, when they're due back, pricing is due back from the contractor. And then we've got this formulas built in to track the status. It's actual, which means it's reached the change order phase. If it's pending, which means it's come in as a COR. Not yet processed, and then if it's potential, which means it's just an estimate. So that this status will change automatically based on what's included in each cell. And then the current amount will reflect again the total of what's coming across in each of these in the status, according to the status, so that your exposure, your forecast is accurately mapped up here in the recap, which is the campus contingency balance. Obviously, it's a negative number there, but that's just with the dummy data that's included. We'll clear this all out, but the formulas are all exist to capture that information properly.
Mhm. Would it be safe to say we don't have to touch this area then, because it's just kind of formula heavy
Yes, absolutely.
from
Right.
like a system admin perspective? And then we could probably like lock the rows too, or something like that.
Correct. Yeah, we've got some of the
Cool.
columns locked
Yeah.
already, and we can
Sure.
lock some others as well up in here.
Awesome.
Right.
And that's just the way to prevent things, just to add on to that, especially if it's a row that's more of a recap where it's got formulas in it, like how Neil's locked the status and the current amount columns, because those have formulas in it. I mean, that they're driven by formulas. That's from a perspective, how you can kind of manage and control things.
I have a question just from a presentation standpoint. The rows that you have 28, 41, 81, 90, it's kind of like in the middle of it. Is that stuff that's needed, or is that just kind of things that are being calculated in the background? Or
So these are things that are this is a recap of all the change orders. So again, this
okay.
was to get, to consolidate a lot of these sheets,
I
these individual
see.
sheets into a
I
single
see.
sheet. And then what comes out of this then is the reports would be generated
Hmm.
to give you your change order log.
Okay.
So again, this is, these are locked, this formula, these are pulling
Pulling.
data
Okay.
points in automatically.
Okay.
And then the information
Rolled
is just
up. Okay.
generated via report, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Okay.
Recap by
I think
GMP.
I think it's important to show that old master log with what those are, so people can correlate the two.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's a theme you'll notice, or functionality you'll notice on a lot of the sheets, is the top is really for summarizing and recapping. And so that's why typically they aren't touched, or they're not supposed to be. Whereas then the individual rows down below drive those numbers that are up above. So that's something that you'll notice on many different sheets.
Okay.
Did you want me to roll into any of the other sheets, Jacob?
Yeah, let's do it. Maybe some of the ones that I'm not as familiar with, like the RFI is probably pretty straightforward, but like the field work construction.
Yeah, RFI log again is identical in terms of formatting and layout to the master log, with the exception of a few column headings. And the reason for that is when a cost exposure is selected in the RFI log. So if you're entering an RFI and there's a cost associated with it, you select yes. What happens is it then transfers and copies this row to the contingencies and allowance log. And in order for the data to land in the appropriate place on the contingency and allowance log, that shows an exposure generated from our RFI, the column headings have to be the same. But we were able to add a column description. So, so if there's any question about what description means and you hover over this, it shows it's the RFI question. Primary column is the RFI subject, and that would be in the areas where the column heading is slightly different than it was previously. But yeah, essentially the layout's the same. If you're capturing RFIs that are coming in from the contractor, you're doing it the same way you have been, by entering the information into these appropriate headings. We've added this column just in the GMP number in case there's an RFI is specific to a GMP. But if it's not, you could leave it blank. It wouldn't change anything. But it allows quicker categorization when it gets to the contingencies and allowance log. so that it lands in the exposures associated with GMP number 2 or 3, what have you. And then again, these are 2 new columns here as well. This is the cost exposure and the estimate exposure column. So if an RFI comes in, you know, you want to place the actual estimate for the costs associated, you can do that here. And again, that'll translate over to the contingencies and allowances log.
And then how does, can we show the automation too, just so you can see what that is?
Yeah, we can. Let me head back there again.
So
I'll
just
do a
to,
quick test.
to add some context too, so the automation tab in the top left corner, when Neil was talking about how when you put in a cost exposure, it copies it over. That's typically driven through these automations up here. Now, again, we won't get too deep into automations right now, but we'll probably just talk about the current automations that the sheets are using, but they're basically just a way to drive, again, automated changes or automated actions, whether it be, you know, sending out an email or copying a row to a different sheet so that information is now on that other sheet, or changing a cell value or recording a date. That's kind of what they're used for right now. In this case, exactly how Neil is saying it, when we have codified it so that when cost exposure changes to yes, it's going to copy that to another sheet, which is our contingencies and allowances log.
Correct. So I can just type in some quick information here. And just show you how it translates over. And then when I click yes and hit save, it should run that automation. And when I open up that same sheet again.
And when copy rows come, they
And-
come to the bottom. Yep, exactly. Under this section.
Yep, and this is it right here. That's the 12222 that I just entered. And this is copied over from that prior sheet.
Then it could be
And
added to the appropriate row. Yeah, exactly.
And the same information holds true for the submittal log, as well as the ASI log. So again, they both function in the same way as in the master log here.
Mhm.
Headings are the same. And with the exception of the 2 new columns, the cost exposure and the amount. Which might be hidden.
And when you see that double, and this is from a system administrative perspective, when you see that double line with the column header, so in this case, there's one, it's a little faint on these ones, but there's one right between those two, and then between ASI SAS and GMP number, it typically means there's a hidden column. And so you have the ability to unhide those columns. So this one was item number, whereas the other one, again, those other pieces. But typically why we hide columns is 1, we don't want the person editing the sheet to see it, or 2, it's not necessary to add more columns to a sheet. But we typically have hidden columns as helper columns. So this could be to help with reporting, aka like a specific value that helps us filter reporting, or it can be kind of a formula that helps us with a calculation, but doesn't necessarily need to be shown. That's typically what is the reason why we would hide a column. So that's one thing to note in here as well.
Correct.
And perfect.
All right, then kick it
Any
back over
questions
to
on-
you.
Yeah, any questions on what we just kind of covered?
I just wish Enrique and Stephanie were here to see that, but again, it's being recorded, so yeah, It's good.
Cool.
I'll let you take a screen back, Jacob.
Worked. And you'll see it in here too. Again, you'll probably see, or maybe not in this case, but yeah. So like certain columns like this, if these were remaining, we would probably hide them and so forth. So like all these columns that come in from the different rows, from the different sheets, if I'm not mistaken, Neil, we would just go in here again and hide column. And that way we make the sheet a lot smaller.
Correct.
Same with like these too. If these are being utilized, we'd probably just either delete them or hide them. So that's kind of what the point of that is. Any other questions before we move on? So the next is our project cost tracker. So the project cost tracker is probably one of, similarly to the contingency allowance log, it's a very important sheet, but it's also got a lot of moving parts to it. So we'll kind of break it down from a kind of a step-by-step process. So the first piece is, again, you'll notice at the top, it's really realistically our summary section. So again, there's some things that we'll be entering in here, and there's some things that you'll see as formula driven. Now, because there's conditional format, that's why you see them as green rather than gray, whereas in here, again, they are gray. But that's always a good rule of thumb, is if it's gray, it's probably a formula. And we'll go through all of these in a minute. So the first thing I want to illustrate is actually with the Elucia chart is where what all the inputs are on this major or project cost tracker major cap. I think that might be helpful to have you visualize that. So I'm going to show you that really quickly. My view. Well, let me gauge the room. Do you think just seeing a quick process map to show like where information's coming or going from and coming to the sheet would be helpful, or?
Yes. Yes, I think so. I don't think we need to get into the details of this one,
Yeah.
but more so the overall process.
Cool.
Yeah.
Perfect. So for a project cost tracker, I'm going to put it here for just a moment. Project. There's a few things going on with this project cost tracker. So the first piece is that it is borrowing data from the project data sheet. So that is one of the connections that is happening as of right now. And I'll show you what that is specifically in just a moment. And actually, we don't have a directory, so I'm going to delete that. So that's the first piece, is it's grabbing vendor and PO data from the template. And that's, sorry, that's in here, my bad. So you'll see that. So, and we'll talk about this in just a moment. So if we look at it really quickly, that was that long vendor list yellow section that I showed in the project data sheet. That's the first thing. So that can either be done as you come into the sheet first to just get acquainted with things and then go back to the project data sheet, or it can be done even beforehand. So that's the first kind of starting point, is populating what are vendor PO numbers and who it is. And we'll talk about why that is important in just a moment too. That's the first part. So as soon as I add in something here, change it in my project data sheet, it'll update in here. And you can see from the cell link right here. Now this PO number is very important. It's the same with the PeopleSoft program code, because this is a number that is being used to identify or to attribute values in the proper columns, or sorry, proper rows. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, so you can see that too. But we'll continue on. So we got our project cost tracker, vendor information is coming in, and I'll actually add in some details to this. So vendor information and PO numbers are coming into here. Next piece is our fund tracker in fund tracker sheets. So as of right now, outside of the system, outside of these processes, we have a fund tracker workspace. And this is where, again, POs, invoices, and everything for those associated with those funds come in. And we'll talk about why that's important in a minute. But again, we'll have one like, let's go to that workspace really quickly, just so I can show you that. So we've got like, I think it's actually, I'll just use a name from this project cost tracker. So sorry for going back and forth. We'll just go in here and load it. So for example, we have a sheet named GF 486, for example. So in here, GF 486, we've got a few other pieces. And this is again where people are, Gene and whoever are manually putting in rows that associate with a PO or a work order number or a permit number and their associated commitments. So, you know, POs and invoices or their associated financials. From there, what happens is all of those sheets get combined using data mesh. So this is, again, where the first premium app is being used. So it's getting combined into one report. And just as a kind of an introduction for those that don't know what a report is in Smartsheet, it's like a filtered view into multiple sheets. So I can technically bring in data from multiple fund tracker sheets or even multiple projects into one report, as long as my column names line up and that matches the filter criterion. So in this case, I'm pulling in all fund tracker sheets data. That's basically what the report is. And again, the reason being is because I want, while there's, you know, a growing amount of fund tracker sheets, I want to make sure that all of that data comes in no matter what. So as soon as I added a new record into GF 486, it'll come into this report, and then my project cost tracker, which we'll talk about in just a minute, will notice the information. So after this, and we'll probably do another meeting just to go over this. Sorry, Marina, in advance, but we'll kind of teach you on that. So data mesh grabs the information and puts it into, oh, sorry, that was the wrong thing. And then puts it into a consolidated fund tracker sheet. And the reason being is it's just like a report. It looks exactly like a report, but it's in a sheet. And this is from a system admin perspective, why it's structured this way. It's because I cannot pull data from a sheet for formulas. Formulas can pull data from sheets. They cannot pull data from reports. So that's why it's important. Instead of having, again, a formula for each sheet, I have one formula for each fund tracker sheet, especially if that's a growing amount of sheets or shrinking. It makes way more sense to have it always come into the same sheet. So that way we don't have to change the formulas ever. So from here, the data is then brought in via a cross sheet formula. Formula brings in PO amounts and, or sums, I should say, it sums PO and invoice amounts. So that's the next piece in here. And I'll show you that right now in here. So again, we're going to go down to our GMP right here. I'm going to scroll over to the right for just a moment. We'll talk about these other columns. And you'll see right here, consolidated fund tracker. So these formulas are bringing in commitments, which are POs, at least from what I'm understanding, and then actuals, which are those invoices. So that's one piece of where, again, those are two connections to the project cross tracker. And there's one more piece. That's one input. Are there any questions on that? Again, the thought process was to make it scalable. And so luckily we don't have to change the formulas, which is the great thing. We just have to, again, make sure that our POs in here match the PO numbers or work order numbers or the permit numbers in our consolidated fund tracker. And I'll show those sheets in just a moment. So that's the main piece. Because again, it's looking for a specific PO number in here. That's what it's looking at, saying sum this amount if it matches this PO number. That's another reason. And that PO number can be a work order or permit number. It's up to, again, because like if it's a state farm SFM number, it still can do that too.
I thought we were looking at the PeopleSoft program code. Is that different?
So that's going to be the next piece.
Okay.
So when it comes to PeopleSoft / PlanOn, that's where we have data uploader, which we talked about in our previous meeting yesterday at the end. And that's going to be the next piece. So the next piece is we have, again, I'm going to use, what shape should I use? I'll use this one. That's fine. So we'll have our PeopleSoft, and we'll have PlanOn. And the next piece is to, again, grab a CSV into, so this would be our OneDrive, right? Our OneDrive folder. And again, you don't have to worry about this too much, but I want to show you where the data comes in. So reports will come into here, to this OneDrive folder. There you go. And then from there, we're going to, same thing as data mesh. We're going to use a premium app. And again, this process map will be cleaned up. I'm just doing it for demonstration purposes. We'll use a data shuttle workflow, or two realistically, not just one, but two data shuttle workflows. So data shuttle workflow for PlanOn and data shuttle workflow for PeopleSoft. That will bring it into, most likely because I don't think the columns match up just perfectly, I'll bring it into two separate sheets. So PeopleSoft, consolidated tracker, and our PlanOn consolidated tracker. So you'll probably kind of understand what's going to happen next, similar to, again, getting it into a single sheet. That data is then cell linked into here as well, using that program code. And those will both be, again, which I do have a key cross sheet formula. So again, sum or cross sheet, sum ifs, formulas, sum the amounts. And again, this information is bringing it into a few other columns, which I'll show you right now. So we have data inputs from 3 different places right now, or technically 4 if we count these separate, which they are. So we've got one from our project data sheet to populate our PO, work order, permit numbers, and the associated contacts, which will then drive or will allow our SUMIF formulas for the fund tracker piece to come in. We've got our program codes already codified as of right now, which will be the identifier for our PeopleSoft and our PlanOn consolidated tracker. And that will come into the PeopleSoft and PlanOn commitments and actuals column. So we'll have the same formulas in there as well. So those are the 3 different inputs that come to the sheet.
Hey, Ray, are you clear on what the reference was to POs? I think I kind of like, it just went over my head. Initially, Jacob, you had said we're referencing POs on one of those.
Right here.
Yeah, but okay, so we put those in from, are they coming in from somewhere?
Project data sheet.
Project data sheet, okay.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and it's technically the column number is PO / work order number, but it could be like, I'm pretty sure this is a permit number, right?
Yeah, for that one,
So-
we have to specifically reference a permit number.
Yeah.
Okay,
So it's going to be the identifier that you would use to, again, that Gene would use in the fund tracker to allocate, again, a specific amount to a specific category.
hmm
So that's kind of what that's for.
okay.
So now we're going to talk about, I just wanted to go again, high level in terms of the inputs that come into the sheet. And now we'll talk about how to set it up and how to get everything working. So what you'll notice is everything in yellow again is editable. So in here, what I would do is I most likely would put in, for all these, you'll see there's no values in here. So I could put 500,000. I can put in, let's say 350, however I want to, and so forth. So I'm going to be setting these up again, all the way down to create kind of my total project budget. That's realistically what these are for. Again, change my markup contingency percentages, put in my values, and then we'll go from there. So again, these ones actually we don't edit because it looks like there's formulas in them. So I can mark those gray. But same with these. Again, I'm going to put in my values in here, and same with schematic design and so forth. Now, and this is the part that I wanted to mention is initial scoping, schematic design, preliminary design. You'll see the yellow columns are also 50%, construction documents, 95%. It just depends on how far, and then we have bid documents. It just depends on what phases are applicable for your project. So it's understood that, sometimes we'll do initial scoping, schematic design, go straight in, and then preliminary, go straight into bid documents, or we'll do 50% construction documents, or only 95%, or all the way to 95, or we'll do the entire phase. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But realistically, again, depending on what phase you're doing, you'd put in your amounts into here. And then they would be summed at the bottom down here. So if I put in, and actually this is not what I would do, but in here, sorry, I go, you'll notice that it updates it in here as well. So that's kind of just an aspect of that piece. And it looks like this formula is not doing fully what I want it to do. So I will make a note to fix this formula because it's double counting.
Okay.
Bert, and I can show you how to do that in just a moment. But again, these bottom pieces are summing it in here based off what values we're putting in here. And if we go up, same thing. So again, these are going to be summarization rows depending on what information we put into here and vice versa.
Mhm.
Now, are there any questions before I continue on?
Just a quick question. On the bottom of the sheet there under the totals for the initial scoping, I'm not sure if it's just due to the color, but are those cells editable or are they locked down?
They are locked down. It's because of the conditional formatting. But what we'll most likely do, again, and this is a great kind of time to explain, we'd probably lock them like that.
I see.
So then they can't be edited.
And are we able to lock down certain cells as well? Using the
Unfortunately,
same
no.
method?
It's either columns or cells. Yeah, that's the only drawback with, or one of the drawbacks with locking in Smartsheet. Yeah, it's rows or cell or columns.
So it's all or nothing.
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, that's correct. Now, there's, again, that's typically where it's just training and color coding. That's why I color it gray anyways, is for that reason, just to try to kind of say, hey, if it's gray, don't touch it. Now, of course, in the case where there is conditional formatting, it doesn't really help, unfortunately. But that's typically the rule of thumb that I like to, how I approach things. Any other questions before we continue on? Now we can add in new rows if we need to, again, in their different pieces. We'll show you that in just a minute, how that's done. Realistically, it would be, again, I'd add in a new row in here. Again, Neil, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but we would put in a program code. I'd put in whatever my description is in here. And then all I would do is cell link in my project data sheet as well to get that to work. And we'll talk about this more on our control center, because this is an important theme. I'm not going to be able to cell link to something that doesn't exist in my project data sheet already. So that's where I'd first create the new row in my project data sheet. And then I would cell link it to here, because I can't cell link to something that doesn't exist already. So that's something to keep in mind. But we'll talk about that in just a minute. Again, that's where you can easily do that. Now, the only time that it's a little bit different is for rows here that are summarizing information, such as these parent rows.
Mhm.
But that's where, in this case, this shouldn't be double duplicating this. So that's where what we're gonna do is just create a slight modification to the formula, so it only sums either the children or only the parents. In this case, we'll just do the children.
I have a question about the
Please.
program code. So when we add a line, how does PeopleSoft know now? I guess we have to do that ahead of time. So we have to think ahead,
Correct.
assign in a program code. When we send it to RJ, it'll have this new program code. Are the program codes set up somewhere in PeopleSoft already? Or are there extras that we can kind of fill in the blanks with different vendors? Like, for example, 72 to 80 are left blank, but they've got a hold.
I can't comment on this just because I'm not. Neil, do you have anything to add?
Sorry, I fully understand the question, Monica.
So, for example, he just showed that we can add, after 72, we can add, something that didn't come up that we didn't know about. How does PeopleSoft know that 73, say we add 73, 74, 75, how does PeopleSoft know that we've added those codes? I understand, you do it in the project intake, and then when we issue the REC to RJ, we're assigning 73, 74, 75, but does PeopleSoft know now that those numbers are basically miscellaneous and they can be assigned to whomever?
There's a process, and I think Maureen, I think was it. So there's a form to fill out to create new codes.
Oh, okay.
That's an internal CO2 Long Beach process to create new codes.
Yeah, so I'll work with RJ and Lisa on that then, just in case it comes up.
Yeah, and that's how PeopleSoft would know that they would get entered, and then you would translate that information, or I guess by that form process, the folks in accounts receivable or payable would know when the invoices come in how to code them, or or direct your project managers on how to code them with those new codes.
Okay. I'm sure it won't come up as often because we covered a lot of things in the soft cost, but we'll see. There's always those projects.
Yep. Now, you'll notice that there's a lot of variance columns to get to the totals. And they're doing exactly what you think they're doing. They're just comparing these different columns with each other. And so the approach to this is that we would just hide the columns that are not necessary to a project. So it most likely won't be a project manager's ability to do that. It probably would be a system admin. Again, it depends on what permission settings you give them. But that's where, again, if there's not gonna be 95% construction documents, I'd hide all of these variances, for example. Or there's not gonna be bid documents, I'd hide all of these, or, DD or SD or CD is not gonna be used in that.
Yeah, I would think anyone could be able to hide because sometimes people have to go in and just present and they
Yeah.
need to hide that. So I would hope anyone could just go in and hide those columns as needed and not need an admin to help them.
So that's where editors cannot hide or unhide columns. That's one thing.
What's that?
Editors cannot hide or unhide columns. That's one thing to keep in mind.
Oh, okay.
So that's the only difference.
Okay.
Now, some important formulas to look at. So this rightmost column is going to grab whatever value is the rightmost. So if there's bid documents, it'll grab that. If there's not bid documents and it's 95% construction is the rightmost value, then it'll pull that. So that's what it's realistically looking for in here. And the goal is just, again, to show what is the most current value
Mm-hmm.
without having to see it or having to look through the different columns. That's kind of
That's
the point
good.
for it.
I was going to ask how you did that. So that's good.
Yep. And it's the same with realistically all of the formulas in this column. Now, what you'll notice too is that, again, this fund tracker manual is just summing, or it's just repeating what's, again, shown down in here, and same with the fund tracker actuals. And these, and why we have this summary section is, one, you don't have to scroll down, and two, it's there for reporting and analytics. So this actually
Mhm.
does get linked back
Mhm.
to our project data sheet.
Mhm.
And again, the easiest way to tell is if there is, typically is if there's a little yellow, or not a little yellow, a little gray or black triangle at the bottom right corner. That's the easiest way to tell if it's going somewhere else.
The blue is coming in, right?
Blue is, yep, incoming. So data is being pulled into this sheet, and then
Mm-hmm.
gray is being pushed out.
Okay.
Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about is the project funding sources. This is the last kind of piece. So as of right now, what you'll notice is that these are just, again, these are kind of hand coded in. I don't think we had a good way of doing this just because there could be more sheets or less. So typically, again, these, what your total secured project budget would be is based off of these in here, or really the secured funds.
Right.
So that's what the total, that's what that total is going. So that's where, again, depending on the phase, and we'll tell the project managers this, I put in what is the fund, what's the name of the fund, and their, again, number, and then from there, I bring in those values.
And those are manual, right? Because they're
Correct.
yellow. Okay.
Mhm. Now you'll see these, which I'm not entirely sure what Sandra had in mind for these, but these are still linked in from the fund trackers. They're individual fund trackers. And I think these were just specific numbers. But I'll follow up with that. We won't do that right now.
Yeah, I don't think that's still.
I don't think that's still
Being,
being utilized.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. So again, this will sum pretty much all of those pieces. And then from there, again, yeah, you'll see it come into here, and then that we brought in, which then will be used for our total project and total secured. So total secured. Any other questions on the project cost tracker major cap sheet? So again, just to reiterate, it's pulling in information from multiple different places. And it's also, again, feeding information back to the project data sheet as well. And then yellow is typically manual. Wasn't the best coordination in terms of the colors. Actually, yeah, it's just yellow will be manual. Anything that's green or red will not be. So it's not anything that's colored, it's just gray or colored aside from yellow. So just yellow is manual, pretty much. Everything else is automatic or not to be touched. All right. So now we'll go into the next piece. And that's the most complex sheet by far, just because it has so many different inputs.
Mhm.
Now, I think in our last meeting, we'll talk about how to, our last system admin meeting, which we recently scheduled, we'll talk about how to kind of maintain and set up those data shuttle and data mesh. So this has already been set up for you. This one hasn't necessarily. We have to do that together because these can't be transferred, weirdly enough. But this one's already set up for you, and we're just going to talk a little bit more in depth on these two pieces, which is our, again, data mesh piece and then the data shuttle pieces, ultimately to feed the project cost tracker. Now, the other thing to look at is the milestones. Again, this is another sheet. Realistically, this is a helper column, so we can just lock this column, but I'll make it out of Gantt view for just a minute. So the main way that this is going to be done or being worked on is this row. This is the main summary row, similar to how we have kind of those recaps or summary rows at the top. This is the main row. I am going to change the color because, again, these pieces are not are not technically yellow. They cannot be updated. So that, come on, there we go, is not true. Same with this row in here. It's not true either. But that's, again, where yellow is manual update, or in this case, white. But realistically, these are our base milestones. If they want to put more milestones, they can in here. This is realistically customizable to the schedule. But again, this is where actual start and finish changes are going to be made, where we're going to update percent completes, most likely, except for our project update sheets, actually, maybe not. But percent completes for the individual milestones. And then we're going to put our schedule, health, and our current stage. And I know, Monica, we talked about kind of doing the current stage in the project update sheet. So we most likely will move to that. But again, this is how it's just set up right now.
Okay. And then the health, how do you update that?
Just manual.
Okay. Yeah.
And the reason being is we just didn't want to conform to like a automated formula, especially if, again, the logic would be to make it too rigid.
I think where you have these right now in terms of stage and health, I think is good. It's because it makes people look at the schedule just to make sure that we're correct.
Yeah.
I think it's good. I think you leave it there, and then wherever that goes out to.
Cool. So again, you'll see the cell links, the important pieces, those black triangles,
Yeah.
and so forth.
Okay.
Construction start, construction stop. So another thing to keep in mind.
And status is percent complete, right?
The status right here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's just if you wanted to put if it's not started in progress. Again, we can get rid of the status. Right now, the status in the project update log is like the specific phase, like marketing or preliminary or procurement and things like that. Whereas this current stage is technically current phase in the project update log. So we can talk about that mapping too.
Yeah, the project update log also shows percent complete of the stage. So I'm not sure where you picked that up from. That's what I was thinking. Maybe we could change status to percent complete of the phase. That's
Yeah.
Overall, percent complete overall.
Yep, and this is percent complete for that particular milestone. But
Yeah,
yes,
but
you're
it's
correct.
just-
It doesn't have it for the phase. You're right.
Right. So maybe we could just change status to percent complete of stage or whatever.
Yeah. Easy enough.
Perfect.
So-
And then that would feed out to the project update log.
Yeah. So just a note, I'm making the change in here just because so I can remember it. But since this is not on the template, it's not going to impact net new projects.
Okay.
So that's just one thing to keep in mind. And that's where, again, if I wanted to make the actual change, I get out of the BH377. I come into here, into my new templates. I go down to my milestones and schedule.
I see.
I come into here and do current stage percent complete. Okay, I get the Gantt view off for a minute. And I make this. Done. That's how I'd address it.
Mhm. And then from here, you would do the hyperlinks, I guess, the
Correct.
cell.
I would
whatever you
do
call
it. So I go to the project sheet, a data sheet, and I'd hyperlink it to this. But now that this is the right destination, now I can go and do that.
Okay,
And so then again, I just for this purpose, we'll do it now. But then I go to my project data sheet. I'd scroll down here to the schedule piece in here. And I would do, again, actually, I'll just go under current phase. Current phase percent complete. Now I'm going to change the name of that column, don't worry. Then I would go and hit right click, link from cell another sheet. Now I have a million workspaces, so I could search it up, but searching it up for milestone schedule is going to show up with 1,000 results. So I'm just going to navigate to it. But next is just, again, choosing what my data source is. And we were going to do this during the control center training, but we might as well do it now.
okay,
Because the control center training has a lot to do with these cell links. They're very important for control center. But we'll make sure to add this during our training. So then I'd just go down to my milestone schedule. I hit current stage percent complete. I can change the column. It won't matter because it's cell linking, not column linking.
mhm,
Hit create link
okay,
and done.
perfect.
So that's how we would do it. Any
This is where
questions
Nick-
on
This
what I
is,
just
this
did?
is, this is where Nick comes in, hopefully, and just makes magic happen.
Yeah.
I lost him. Is he there? Yeah, he's still there. Okay.
Hopefully.
Yeah, so that's what we're going to do. And then in control center, we're going to tell the system, hey, this is a new column that or new row that we added. I want you to make a new column in the product summary sheet and so forth. But we're going to go to the dashboard next, and then we're going to end in the project or the portfolio summary, which right now is called, I think it's called the portfolio or project summary role, but we can rename it to project update sheet or project update log, or however we want to call it. Does not matter. So similarly to what we talked about before with the project data sheet being the most important piece, same thing here. Realistically, again, the project data sheet, all of these, if we look at where this metric is looking at, project data sheet. And that's where everything aside from this report and these two reports, and then some of these links are going to be, again, the project data sheet. And that's just because, again, it's our consolidated place. It's our one sheet for all of our information. It's easiest to look at that. So when I hit it, edit the dashboard, I'll be able to see all the different widgets. And so I'm not going to get into a generic dashboard training right now, just because it would take forever. But my metric widgets, which are these ones in here, again, you can denote them typically because they have two values in a little box. That's not the best way. It's just by clicking on them is the best way to tell. This just means it's not a static value. As soon as I update any of these values, it will update in the project data sheet. And in this case, they're subsequent sheets. So if I update in the milestone schedule red, and I change the phase, it will update in here, and I will demonstrate that in just a moment. These are basically live. These are kind of like cell links in their own right, realistically. So they're live, being live updated. Same with the charts, right? They're also looking at the project data sheet in here as well. And again, as soon as changes are made in the project data sheet, they're going to update as well. And same with these charts and so forth. So realistically, everything aside from reports, because the reports are going to be their own piece of information, their own value or their own asset. Everything else is going to be looking at the project data sheet, which is why we consolidate all of it in there. It's realistically our profile data update place, our destination, and also our consolidation and summarization sheet. Now, of course, you have other widgets you can add. Again, there's lots and reports and dashboard training that has a lot of this good stuff. So I'm not going to get into it too much right now, but we can do external links. We can do other metrics or charts. We can do web content pieces. So you can actually bring in like other embedded content or images as well. So that's another thing to keep in mind. Oops, didn't mean to do that. So that's just something to keep in mind there too. And that's just an important piece. The product dashboards really just a formatting thing. And then I've already specified my values in the product data sheet. That's why it's typically pretty simple. We kind of breeze over it. Now, again, just to demonstrate, I'm going to follow the path of when I make a change. So I'm going to change that to yellow. I'll just do design. I hit save in here. I'm going to change this to today. And then I'm going to say that this is a predecessor of the previous one. So I want to say that my predecessor is 5. So that will update in here. I hit save. I'm going to follow along the path. So now I'm going to go to my project data sheet. You don't have to do this. You can just go straight to the dashboard. But we're going to go down to our schedule, yellow, design, and then our dates have now changed. So again, the cell links are live. So as soon as I make an update, it'll come up and then I'll go to the project dashboard. Same thing. Dates have changed, design, yellow. So it's going to update as soon as changes are made. It's very rare that it doesn't.
That's crazy. And I'll update all the reports going out too, for
It does.
example.
Yes, the reports are the same. It will update them in here as well. So you can
Mhm.
see it already updated. Yeah.
Nice.
Sorry about that. Any questions on the dashboard or its connections or just in general? Any questions in general? Cool. Now, best way to distribute a dashboard, it just depends on who your target audience is. If it's someone who is internal Smartsheet, I'd use the top right button to share, and this goes for any sheets. And if it is internal Smartsheet, internal to your org, if it's someone that doesn't have Smartsheet, doesn't want to ever get Smartsheet, or you don't even want them to go through the trouble of creating an account, you want to publish it. Just note when I publish it, it means that anyone with the link can view. So similar to publishing in either Microsoft or in Google. The same thing with that. I can choose if I want it to be in someone's account or only users that share the item, but that's again going to be user specific. So they have to have a Smartsheet account. If not, anyone with the link. So that's another way to distribute it. And then of course there's printing and or taking screenshots. Another way to distribute it as well. But when I publish it, it'll be, again, as soon as a change is made, it will update, and same with sharing, whereas obviously screenshots are not going to.
Sorry. You can take a screenshot straight from Smartsheets, or do you have to use a snip tool? And
You have to use a snip tool, yeah.
yeah, okay.
Or if you use like Control Alt print screen or Control print screen, yeah. But
Uh-huh.
other than that, yeah, it's a snipping tool, so that's why it's not going to be automatic, or it's not
Okay.
going to update. It could be not live. Now, where does the product data sheet information go? Again, like we talked about in our previous meeting, it always comes in a cell link back into here. That's just how it's done. Now I changed the whatchamacallit, oh gosh, the template. So that's why none of these are showing up. But again, the same thing can be said, and I'll do it in just a moment. But again, this is going to be our project update sheet, you'll notice that again, I haven't hidden those columns yet. So that's where, again,
Mhm.
reports are nice because reports don't have to show everything. I can, stop the report right delivery method. But you'll see other information coming in, like things like this. I can just delete because we're not using them right now. We can in the future if we want to, and we'll talk about that. But again, like projected cost complete, I think that's from the cash flow. So I'm just gonna, I could delete that anyways, but like RFIs, open, close, submittals, variants, etc. Again, this is all just data that I've specified I want to bring into Control Center. But again, we can hide these columns. We can delete them, those columns. We don't want it to roll up. And we can kind of craft this to be whatever experience you want. And we can, of course, add new data too. Realistically, I'd say kind of what we've talked about, only some of the information will be manual. I think like ITS, DCS, and so forth. So I think this will actually come in from our project data sheet as well, which I've actually set up to do so. But realistically, in most cases, the sheet is more just to display information on a dashboard. That's what it's for, and to house it for metrics. So I can see how many projects are funded by this funding source, how many projects are with this customer or meet these primary project initiatives or contain these primary project initiatives or are in this phase, etc. So that's kind of what that's for. Have this customer contact or project manager.
Yeah, we use this project, and you will change the title, right? Project
Yes.
update. Okay, we use this weekly to review all of our projects. So I guess it's probably be critical before we present it to everyone that it's cleaned up. Like, as you
Yeah.
had mentioned, you'll delete the to match what we have now, and then
Do it right
whatever.
after this meeting.
Yeah.
I wanted to save it for demonstration purposes, so maybe I still will. I probably will.
Okay.
But I can clean up the yellow and stuff like that. Yeah, because this is an important part that's governed by Control Center as well. But like I said before, again, it's also navigational tools. So if I come into project dashboard into here, I go into my project folder. I go into milestones, yellow, design. And then I go back to even the portfolio dashboard. Not portfolio dashboard, the project update log, design.
Mhm.
I scroll over my schedule health. I need to do that in Control Center too. That was what I wanted to do. My schedule health will come over and so forth. So
Yeah, that's great.
so again,
It's
it
good
will
that
update real time.
It's great that you can see where the links are, because if people think, where did that come from? You know, they know exactly where to go.
Yeah.
To know where to update it from. So
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So I'd say the only thing other than that, realistically, we'll go over this in our last system admin training. We'll try to schedule that one with Marina pretty soon. But the only other things that we would talk about from a system admin perspective is formula maintenance. So how do we house and document formulas properly? Then it's kind of troubleshooting pieces, which we'll talk about during our Control Center training, because that's typically the main source of troubleshooting. And then lastly, it would
even
be
reporting, like
archiving, which
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, archiving, yes. And then reporting, like if we want to create custom reports.
yeah, well, we can cover that as well.
Okay.
And actually, let's cover it right now. So with reporting, it depends on what level you want to do it at. And so we'll start with kind of our active projects, and we'll do it in here. Or yeah, we'll start. Actually, we'll do it with our new template. So you can see I actually added in a new report as well. I think it was the report, was it? No, it wasn't that one. I think it was my, it was the fund tracker. Here it is. Okay. It was an open work order report, but we'll actually create something different. So let's say I want to see all of my open RFIs. I want to create a report of that. So this is an example of it. I create it up in here. Now we have to be a licensed user to create reports. But I'm going to create a report. We'll do open RFIs in here, and it's going to be a row report. Very rarely is it going to be a sheet summary report, and we're not going to get into it because it's so rare.
Mhm.
It's just not applicable in this use case, but the cool thing with reports is that they are filtered views into one or multiple sheets. So to expand on that, if I want to see all of my open RFIs, you know, if I look at my RFI log and there's 100 rows, 100 RFIs, but only 20 of them are open, I can use a report to see this, to see that. And I can put it on a dashboard so people can see that as well. Whereas if I just left it on a sheet and I did a filter, well, I could filter those out on a sheet. I can't necessarily take that sheet filter and put it onto a dashboard for people to view, or I can't use that sheet filter to, I can't have people collaborate on it. But if people are looking for they want the whole piece of the pie, it just makes that experience a little bit, or it just makes it hard for them to collaborate on. And by collaborate, I mean edit records or update things.
So you're
So
saying
that's
you
where-
could filter, you could, when you're in the log, you could filter it and see what's
Mm-hmm.
outstanding and maybe do a print from there.
Exactly.
But if you actually want like a bigger picture kind of thing and maybe gather multiple project information into one big, whatever. This
Yeah,
is-
you
you'd
could do
have to
open
create a
RFIs of
report.
all projects. Yep, you're
Okay.
exactly right. Yep. And the other nice thing about reports is that you don't have to show, they're filter views in terms of columns as well. I don't have to show all the columns that may be present. So that's where you can remove hidden columns. It's really good for summarization, because if you look at our project update sheet versus our project update report, the project update report has 20 fewer columns. So that's just an example of that. So that's why it's super, super helpful in this instance. So what I'm going to do, so I'm going to go to my active projects. I'm going to go to, because we're in this sheet, and I'm going to go to my RFI log and hit next. Again, you'll see that there's all these columns, but maybe they're not important. So maybe I want to just do the RFI question, remarks, and then the status. And I just want to do if it's a campus contractor, campus contingency. And I want to do when it was submitted. And actually, I'm not going to do status because they're all, we'll keep status for now because they're all, they're going to be all open anyways. Maybe I want to do potential change. We'll do that. Okay. So you can see there's a lot more, but I'm deciding just to use these ones. Now, the cool thing is I can rearrange, I can hide columns in here too. I can do all of this. Maybe I want to put the RFI status here instead. And sheet name, I want to remove. So again, we can customize it however we want.
Okay.
With that being
What
said,
Yeah, so that's within a project, but say for administrate like a director level, they want overall reports for
We can do
multiple
it.
projects.
Yeah,
Where would
we
that
can do it.
reside?
It wouldn't reside in the particular project folder. We would do it at the portfolio level,
Okay,
which we're going to create we probably will just recreate this report at the portfolio level during Control Center training, because there's a dynamic report scope, which we're going to talk about during that piece.
Okay.
But
okay.
realistically,
Jumping the
with
gun.
reports, I don't have to do one sheet. Right now it's one sheet, but I could do, wow, I didn't realize there's that many in this workspace, but I could do 7,749 sheets if I wanted to.
Okay,
And I've seen upwards of 5,000. So again, I can bring in multiple sheets at once. But again, the columns need to have the same name. They need to be standardized. So
Okay.
standardized in name and type. And if I change that name and type, I have to come back in the report and fix that.
mhm,
The last important piece is that filter criterion. So I can filter on a sheet, no problem. We can still do that. But again, if I want to group or summarize or sort, do auto sorting, or if I want to, again, display this for multiple RFI logs, I'm going to need to come into here and apply this filter as well if I need that filter. So in this case, yeah, I only want to show open RFIs. So I'm not going to show any RFI status. That is, and actually I'm going to do it instead. I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to do is not one of, closed. So that way, when I hit save, it'll lessen the amount of sheets in here. So I can filter out things too, or I want to only, for example, show when it's open and where the cost exposure is yes. And that will filter it more.
Mhm. Okay. So this report stays forever though. It's not just a one-time thing.
Stays forever.
there. Okay, for that project.
For that
Just because
project.
we've had instances where we've had to divide a project into 4 different contracts with multiple funding sources, good one. And then, so we have 4 different folders that may have, the same contractor though. So we'll just have to talk strategically if we create 4 different folders because they may have different, I don't know. So those are nightmare jobs.
Bring it together with reports.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, just create it as a report so they could see a snapshot of everything.
Yeah.
And we
I
could
can
do that with
summarize
the
too.
and we could do that with the fiscal side as well, right? We could do anything.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
can,
okay.
I can group by status. And I can sum by potential change, for example. So like
Uh-huh.
I can do that and you'll see how that will look.
Okay.
So then where my statuses went, so I'll hit refresh, but yeah, I don't know where the heck my statuses went right now, but oh, it's because it needs a load, goodness sakes. But yes, I could do that as well.
Okay.
Oh wait, I know why. It's because the primary
Okay,
column.
then. Yeah.
Yeah. So I can again sum by status, in group by status. I can sort by like date received or date submitted. Again, there's so many different things you can do with reports, and that's kind of the point of them. And then I can put them on a dashboard, similar to how we have the milestone schedule dashboard right, or report on the dashboard right now, and how we have some portfolio reports as well.
Mm-hmm. All right.
Cool. Any other
Being an
questions?
Excel wizard, boy, we don't need a little refresher course.
It'll take time. There is a learning curve. There really is. There's no denying it. So,
Yeah.
but again, that's where it does become a lot easier as you just start working out. I know people that master it within like 2 or 3 projects. So,
Okay.
yeah. So that's kind of a deeper dive into the project template folder, its connection between the project data sheet and the intake and the project data sheet and the portfolio summary or the project
Okay.
update log, sorry. Project update sheet. Yeah. Cool.
Thanks, Jacob. That's a lot.
Yeah,
Thank
I
you,
know.
Jacob. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, I will send out today and tomorrow, yesterday's recording in just a moment. But yeah, so I'll go and clean up some of those things, Monica, and then we'll go from there. I think we can make little tweaks and things until, when is DCS is, I think until the 22nd. So we
Yeah,
have a
the
little more time to make
22nd.
training. Yeah.
Yeah.
So next time we're going to do control center training. So again, that's going to be the back end solution that takes that template and creates all these projects, and then also helps us with archiving and actually doing bulk updates. So updating multiple projects at once or multiple sheets, reports, dashboards, et cetera, at once.
Okay.
So the thing that's going to save everyone the most time.
Okay.
Perfect.
Walter, you have a
Yeah.
question?
Oh, I do, yeah. If
Yeah.
you can send us the recordings, I don't know who's recording,
I'll-
Monica or Jake.
Oh
Yeah,
wait,
I-
yeah, I can't send the recordings.
I'm recording. I've been sending them. I'll send you the links. I'll send the
Yeah.
link to everybody where
That's
they
great.
reside. And
Yeah,
then,
that's great. That way
yeah.
we can
Sorry,
follow it
Yeah,
slower.
get a little refresher. Yeah.
I'm used to recording, so I was like, yeah, I'll send it to you.
I know.
I'm in control, Jacob.
Mhm.
Great.
Girl, awesome.
All right, thank you. I think we
All
have
right.
the last 2 this week, right? The 17th and the 18th.
Correct. And then we will do one more,
Mhm.
probably either before or after the 22nd. It's not contingent on the project managers. It's not gonna be a piece that they're gonna be messing with, and that's gonna be the data mesh and data uploader
Yeah.
Oh,
or
okay,
data shuttle. And then from
Okay.
there, we'll be good to go, all trained
great.
for our final Q&A. So
All right, sounds good.
How
Thank
how
you.
does Yeah,
Oh,
how
go
does
ahead.
this differ from the training that's online, that
This is
that
solution
comes with
specific.
it? Okay,
Yep. Training online is great for just base knowledge. Reporting, I kind of just talked about. Most of it's just tailored with your use case though.
yeah,
That's why.
Okay.
So like cell links, there's stuff on cell links, but like specific cell links between sheets and identifying things is just some kind of best practice pieces. But you will get that. You'll just get it a lot more high level.
great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. All right. Talk to you
Thank
on
you.
Thursday.
Thanks, everyone.
See ya.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
See you Thursday.
Thank you.